I'm live! Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to the shop. Today we're going to be having a good bit of fun, hopefully finishing up our straight razor. Last time we got the pieces glued together and roughly shaped, so today we're going to go through and we're going to finish the shaping, do some detail work on it, maybe do a little bit of carving, but we're also going to be looking at the straight razor itself, how to grind it down, how to sharpen it, and we'll be going into a bunch of different things. And once we start talking about this, we're going to be starting a whole bunch of arguments, which is one of my favorite things to do on this channel, so we're going to be having a good bit of fun tonight. Things coming up. So I have the MWTCA meet coming up here the 29th of March, so the end of this month, here in Loves Park. So it'll actually be just a couple miles away from our house, which is like awesome. And so this is a tool sale that is one of the it's not one of the largest local ones, but it is one of my favorites. There's a lot to offer there. So I will be there hanging out. If you want to come say hi, come do that. You have to be a member to get in the door. So this is for members only. So if you want to come, you can become a member at the door and join, and then come on in and have some fun. Then we have the national meet, which is coming up in June, and that will be up in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And I'm really looking forward to that. I'm actually going to be giving a talk there. So if you want to come see me, I'm actually going to be, hopefully I'm going to have another workbench that I'm making, a Moravian workbench, and I'll be able to take that up and do some demonstrations there. So I'm getting excited about that one. But that'll be coming up towards the end of June. Are there any other events that I'm going to right now? I don't think so.
I don't know, but you just look ever so slightly like fuzzy.
Out of focus? Let me see if I can focus a little better.
Can you crisp it up?
Oops, stepped on it. Let me do this down. I gotta focus down on the front of the bench here. Here, see if that makes it a little bit sharper.
Oh, yeah. And I never know if it's my glasses, like if there's a smudge, or if it's,
there.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
So, what we're going to do is we're going to be working on the frame. But first thing I want to do is I want to talk about actually grinding the blade itself. Now, most of these, if you do get them hand forged, they're going to come rough ground. They're going to come rough. So they hand forge them and then they leave the blade about a 1/16 inch thick, and then they'll harden it and treat it like that. The problem with that is a 1/16 inch thick is still way too thick. We've got to grind it down. And once it's been hardened, we have to do this with an aggregate. So you have a couple different options. Number one, the hard way is to get some sandpaper and wrap it around something with about a 6-inch radius, and then use that to slowly grind and file this down into shape. But my estimates is that's somewhere around 12 hours worth of work. And a lot of sandpaper. So I actually opt for a bench grinder here. Now, if you want to go full traditional, you can get a hand crank grinder. I have two in the shop, but neither of them are up and working right now. And so if I had one, I probably would do that. But I have two different grinders in my shop, so I'm just going to go ahead and use that. You're going to need a 6-inch disc. That is the radius on the sides here. And the one downside to this is the grinders will heat these up very, very quickly. So I have a bucket of cold water here, and I'll do like 2 or 3 seconds of grinding and then cool it down, and then 2 or 3 seconds of grinding and then cool it down. You're always trying to keep the blade cool. If you get it up too hot, you're going to ruin the temper that is on it. And what you're going to end up seeing is at some point in the blade, it'll start to turn colors. It'll go from straw and then down into your blues, and that's when you've ruined the temper. And so anytime you see colors changing on this, immediately stop and dip it in the water. That means you take it too far. You want to work on it without seeing any of the colors on it. So I'm actually going to switch over to the other camera here and show you. So
it does the same thing you do with your temper? Changes colors?
Yes. I don't have a temper. What are you talking about?
Hey, I got to get you back for last week.
I didn't do anything last week. What are you talking about?
So the poor man wants to know if can they retemper it?
Let me switch back to this one. Yes and no. You can retemper it, but you can't reharden it because if the steel is too thin, the hardening just doesn't work on it, and it causes other problems and can cause the blade to become brittle and break. You can retemper it, in other words, heat it up to 400 and then slowly bring the temperature down. That's tempering, it's letting the steel relax. But if it has been if it has been softened. So what you're basically doing is if you're grinding it and you heat it up past 400, so you heat it up to like 800 degrees, and then it lets it cool down in the air past 400 degrees, well, then you've ruined the hardness on the steel. And no amount of tempering is going to bring that hardness back. You have to go back and re-harden the steel. Now, it's not a huge problem, but if you're working for perfection, you're just going to want to stop before it changes colors. Because once it changes colors, you may have ruined the hardness on there. So let me show you what I do. Now, I'm not going to turn the grinder on because this thing gets really, really, really loud and you're not going to be able to hear me talk. So I'm going to kind of pantomime what we've got on here. Now, I already have this one ground and shiny. As you can see, it's really nice and shiny. And so what I'm going to end up doing on here is I have one on one of my other grinders that's a 60 grit. I have another one that is 100 grit, and then this one is a 200 grit wheel. And so if you only have one or two, that's not a problem, but going through the grits, again, just makes it easier. What I'm going to end up doing here is these already have a concave shape, and so it makes it fairly easy. I don't have a rest on here. I find that causes more issue. And so I'm actually going to freehand it. I'm going to put one finger on here, and I'm going to rest it on the back edge first, and then tip the blade down in. And so I'm just going to set on there very, very, very lightly, tip it down in, and as soon as I have a registered surface, I'm going to start moving it across the blade to the other side and then pull it away. And it's really going to be about that long, so it's like, that's the total movement. Once I've done that once, I'm going to stick it in the water, I'm going to cool it off, and then I'm going to come back and do it again. And for me, on one of these grinders, it's about 45 minutes to an hour's worth of work to just do the grinding. It takes a lot of work because you want to go slowly. If you go fast, you're going to ruin the hardness on this. It takes 45 minutes to an hour of grinding on this, and you're just going to be doing one at a time. And I always want the blade edge down. And what happens is any water that's sitting on the back of this from cooling will come down to the bottom and will keep that thin edge nice and cool. And as soon as you start to see that water disappearing, that means, hey, move on or take it away. Because what you're doing is you're actually boiling off the water. So as long as there's water sitting on that tip, you know that the tip is at least 200 degrees or cooler. The moment that water starts boiling off, you know that the temperature on that tip is getting above 200 degrees. So either move the blade on further to another spot or take it off, cool it down, and put it back on there. And then I'm going to flip it around and do it on this side. And that way I always have the thin blade edge down. That way water is dripping on the very bottom edge. And so I'm going to go through all of my grits just like that and just going cool it down, cool it down.
I'm so glad you came.
And so this is just over and over again like that for hours. And then you can take it onto a buffing wheel, which I like to do. That way you can get it nice and shiny. My first one, I actually, I kind of like this look a little bit better where I still have the scratch pattern up here on the back. What's that? Oh, here, sorry. There we go. So this one has the scratch pattern on the back from the stone, but then I buffed up just the blade. And I really like the look on that. It just gives it a little bit of a texture to it. Yeah, I don't know. So I'm kind of part and partial. I did this one. Woo, that was close. Sliced my finger off. This one has the scratch pattern and it's buffed right up at the edge. This one, I decided to go all the way and buff the thing pretty much all the way out. But that meant probably about 30 minutes of just buffing on the wheel. And so I'm going to use my chrome oxide buffing compound that I sell, load up the wheel, and then run it on this, and then load up the wheel, and then run it on this, and load up the wheel, and run it on this, and load up the wheel, and run it on this until I can get it all the way down. You get the nice shiny surface. But that will just bring this edge down to a jointed edge. It's not sharp. The edge still has a visible mark. So if you look at it from the front, you can still see a line coming all the way down it. From that point on, then we can move into the sharpening. Switch over. Switch over. Oh, I did switch over. Now with the sharpening, with a straight razor, there are so many myths and methods, and there are people who say this is the traditional way to do it, and other people say this is the traditional way to do it. And the reason that there are so many ways of doing it is because there are so many different traditions out there. Different people are going to have to sharpen it a different way. And my grandpappy taught me to sharpen it this way, and well, my grandpappy taught me to sharpen it this way. There is no right or wrong way to sharpen this. Some people swear by taking this up to 16,000 grit or higher before then taking it to the strop. Once you understand, though, that all you're doing is you're bringing these two edges together, and you want to make these two edges as fine as possible. In other words, you want to make a low angle, and you want to make these absolutely touch. The finer you can get that edge and the sharper you can get that angle, then the sharper that this is going to be and the more efficient it will be. Now there's two different things you need to understand, because there is sharpness, and that is how much material is on the very, very tip where these two edges touch. And then there is angle, and that is the cutting angle. And the lower the cutting angle is, the more efficient it will be, the less force it's required to cut the material you're cutting. The sharper it is, the less force it's going to take to do it. And so you get a combination of both a low angle and a sharp edge, and you can slice through hairs just by touching them. Now, because, I didn't grab, let me see if I can grab some paper here. Explain this. I'm going to write on a cardboard box. This way you can understand what I'm talking about. If I was thinking about it, I would have gotten a piece of paper on here. Focus on this before switching over to. So what we've got on here is, if you imagine, here is our blade. So on the back of this we have a big wide blade, and then it comes down in a bit of a curvature here, and it comes down in a bit of a curvature here, and then you still have a little bit of a flat spot on here. Now this flat spot is about the thickness of a piece of paper right now, because we ground it down to that. Initially, this flat spot was about 1/16 of an inch. And so now what we want to do is we want to actually put a small blade on here. So from the middle of this back to here, and the middle of this back to here. And so we're going to put a small angle on here. Now there's two different ways of doing this. You'll have some people that say what you want to do is you want to rest the blade on the stone so that this is touching and this is touching up here. And so if this was your stone, you're basically sharpening it at that angle. And then you have another source of people that say, well, you can actually get the angle lower if you rest it just on this area right here. So if you rest it just on this little bit, you can actually get an angle that's more like this. And so you can get a much finer angle on here. The problem with that is it takes more balance. I'm going to be talking about that a little bit more in a bit. But I kind of want you to envision you have this scooped out area in here on either side, but then we still need to put a little bit of a point down here on the tip. And this is wildly overdrawn. I mean, from here to here is anywhere from 1/16 inch to an 1/8 inch. There really is not much material here to be removed. So that is what we're going to be focusing on here with the sharpening. And speaking of which, I've got my trusty diamond plate here. And here we're going to start a whole nother set of arguments. You'll have people who say, no, you have to do it on whetstones, because whetstones you can get up to 8,000, 16,000, 24,000 grit. And to that I say absolute phooey, because the last thing we're going to be touching it either way is a strop. And this is the final grit that's going to be touching it. So it doesn't matter what other grit is on there, as long as the last grit you go on a stone can then transfer to a strop. That's what matters. So I just use the diamond plates, and officially this is like 1200 grit, but diamonds cut very different from whetstones. So you can't equate a 1200 grit diamond stone with a 1200 grit whetstone. So the two different ways of doing this: number one, I can rest the back of the blade on here and then put the blade down on here. And this is very, very easy because I can just quickly run it back on here. There is no problem. It's very easy to stabilize, but I'm not going to be getting quite as fine of an angle along the edge. It makes it very, very efficient, very, very easy. It's basically its own honing guide because you can set the back on there, and anyone can do it that way. There really is no problem to doing it this way. It's easier, it's more efficient, it works really, really well. But if you want to get the absolute keenest possible edge on here, the best way to do it is actually to put it here on the edge and only have about 1/4 inch of the blade actually onto the plate. Zoom in a little bit closer on this. Let's see if I can. Don't pull the cable out. Don't pull the cable out. Here, focus. In. There we go. Now we can see what I'm talking about here. So I can put this on here, and I'm actually going to rest 2 fingers underneath. I'm going to let those 2 fingers slide on the plate, and so those become my honing guide. And then I'm going to set this on here, And this allows me to then adjust my angle. And so I can find the angle at which it almost rubs on here. You can see a couple spots on this where I've actually rubbed on this. Let me see. There's a few scratches on here that, oh no, I got scratches on it. But that is the lowest angle I can possibly go on here. So I'm going to add a little bit of Windex to this.
Just so you know, I've had several questions already, so.
Okay, questions in this process, or?
Yeah.
All right, let me just show this, and then I'll be done with the sharpening. We can answer a couple questions. So I'm going to set it on here, and I'm going to rest on my fingers, and I'm just going to rub it back and forth, just like that. It takes a little bit of practice, but once you get it going, it's actually really, really efficient to just balance it on there and use your fingers as the honing guide. And I want to go until I feel a hook coming up on this side. So I got a little bit of a bevel coming up on this side. I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And when I'm initially doing this, I'm going to go with an extra coarse, a fine, and then the extra fine, which is this. And going through those all step by step until I get this. Now, whatever side I last did, I'll feel a burr. Yeah, there it is. So I last did this side, and so there's a burr on this side back here. And it doesn't matter which side I do, because if I do this side to try and bring the burr back, I'm always going to be moving the burr back and forth. As long as I've sharpened it all the way on one side, and I've moved the burr all the way to one side, and then I flipped it over, and then I've sharpened it on this way until the burr is all the way along the blade sticking up on the other side, then it's ready to go to the strop on this plate. So, you got any questions while I'm flipping this?
Yeah. So some of these I'm going to ask a little out of order just because of what you've talked about.
Cool.
So Brian Ross asked, how do you know when you are done with each grit?
When I go through the diamond grits, I am actually just doing that same thing, waiting until I get a burr sticking up on one side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one side of the iron on my coarse grit until I get an even burr coming up all the way around. So that burr is sticking up, if this is the blade, if I'm doing this edge, it's going to be creating a burr sticking up this way. And I want that burr to be running all the way along the edge. Then I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to do the other side until I get the burr working all the way back around the other way. And I'm going to be able to feel the edge all the way along and make sure that the burr is all the way along the edge. Then once I have that burr on both sides, then I'm going to take it on to the next plate and do it all over again until I get the burr flipped on both sides. And what you're basically doing is you're making a finer and finer burr. So you've got that tip coming together, and there's a little string of steel coming up from that tip.
I got clarification. Brian said he was referring to the grinder at the time.
Oh, I'm going to use it on the coarsest grit all the way up until the end, and the other grits just get rid of scratches. So that's the only thing. If you don't have the other grits, you don't need them, because the sharpening stone is what's going to actually give you your sharp edge. So the other grits just help you get rid of the scratches faster. So if I want to get rid of if I want to have a really nice mirror finish, I'm going to go through all the grits right at the end. And it usually only takes like 2 or 3 passes on the other 2 grits to get it to it. So I'm spending almost all my time on my coarsest grit, which I think is a 36 grit or something like that. So, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, some of these were back at the grinder.
Cool.
Portion.
You got another one that I can catch up?
Yeah, so Ouroboros Armory said, would it go faster if you climb up the sandpaper after grinding?
If I climb up the
sandpaper?
You could do that in place of the other grits. But, if you're talking about like mirror finish grinding, maybe, maybe not. It depends on how efficient you are and how much you like slicing your finger open. No, really, it doesn't take that much less if you can go through other grits of grinding wheels. If you don't have that, then sandpaper is the way to go. But it still takes a lot to go through this, because this is a fairly hard steel. What's one of the things about straight razors is they aren't made. The steel in your irons is actually a little bit softer. They harden these a bit more. And so the tempering on this isn't quite as much. So these tend to be a little bit more brittle than your plain irons. That also means that it takes more work to get scratches out. So that's why it's just a little bit more fun than that. One more before I go into stropping.
Alan Smith asked, how do we maintain the edge in the long run? Keep stropping it?
I'll be talking about that in a little bit.
There we go.
Speaking of stropping, I've got a piece of horse hide. So this is actually horse butt leather, which I sell on my strop. I sell my strops on my shop. If you want to see that, woodbywright.com/shop. And I'm actually just going to put this scrap piece on the edge of the bench. Let me focus on this. There we go. And to initially do this, I'm actually going to load this up pretty well with polishing compound. The polishing compound just gives me a bit of an aggregate that sticks in there. And in this case, I'm going to rest it on here just like I said before I don't like doing, because doing it this way is pretty much worthless. And the leather will deform enough. And so I'm going to put my fingers on here and I'm going to go across this way. I'm going to lift it up, turn it over, and then I'm going to come back this way. I'm going to lift it up, go back over, and I'm probably going to do this 40 or 50 times. Let me just show you what it looks like is actually this. Each time I come to the stop, I'm going to lift it up, turn it over, put it back down. And what I'm trying not to do is I don't want to turn it over with the blade down there, because you'll then scratch the blade or you'll end up slicing your strop. And so I'm just going to do this 30, 40 times or so. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing with just raw leather. Oh, I put it away already, didn't I?
What you looking for?
Seeing if I have another strop that's raw. I don't. Got a question while I'm looking? I think I have one over here.
Yeah. Tim BBQ asked, are some straight razors convex on one side and concave on the other side?
There are a bunch of different straight razor profiles. And I have seen some that are convex on one side. The vast majority of them are concave on both sides. But yes, there are some weird ones out there. Shoot. I don't have my scrap. Okay, so just to imagine, I've got another leather strop that is floating around here somewhere. I cleaned up my project earlier. And so I'm going to do basically the exact same thing. I'm just going to do it on raw, smooth leather. And I'm going to do it another 30, 40 times. And what that's going to do is it's actually going to polish the steel. The oxide on there is actually an aggregate. It scratches the steel. And then the raw leather just kind of buffs out any of the rough scratches. And once you get that down to the point, you should be pretty sharp and ready to go. And this one, even without the leather, is relatively sharp. It's probably about as sharp as it will be at the end of a shaving. And I can show you what it will look like. So let me bring my arm in here. So let's focus on, got to find a spot that actually still needs to be shaved. I've been sharpening so many of these recently that I don't have much on it.
I could do your head or your beard.
Yeah. And so, let's see. There you go.
Do your leg.
This one is a little bit on the dull side because I didn't bring in any other strop. And so, you should be able to do that. Now, some people are going to complain that I'm pushing too much into my skin. And the problem is I have fairly loose skin on my arms. If it's on my head, it looks more like this, where I'm just sliding it across. Which in this case, I'm still
we could
shaving the
demonstrate
hairs.
that.
Ooh, I like that. Now I got all this smooth spot in here. There's just something about that. And so right now, this edge is probably somewhere around 95 grams of pressure. If I have the raw strop, I could take it down to somewhere around 85, 90. And that isn't going to mean too much until you actually get a tester. And so I have a scale that I actually let me just go ahead and do one now, and I can actually see what we've got on here. And so what this does is it has a tiny filament that is manufactured to the nth degree, so that we know exactly what it takes to break that. And so let's see if we can do this. Focus. And so in here,
you would have to change your camera.
Thank you. In here, there is a filament running across this space, and it's setting on the scale, which is incredibly accurate and precise scale. And so I can set this on here. Yep, turn it on, zero it out. And we can see how much force does it take slice this. Ooh. 115. So it's at this sharpness is right about where I take my plane irons to. If I get it on the other strop, I can usually get it down to around 90, which the difference between 90 and 115 isn't that much. This is still sharp and razorable, but the more you get it, the less problem you're going to have with chafing and other things like that. So that's going to bug me now. Where did I put that extra scrap? So that's basically what we have for sharpening. If you have any questions, throw them in the chat and I will get to answering them all. It's one of these things that there are 1,000 different ways to do it, and I'm just showing you the method that works for me. If you go online and search for how to sharpen a straight razor, every video you see is going to give you a whole different method and different things to watch out for, because there are 1,000 different ways to do it. So it's one of those fun things to play through. So what questions do we have while I set this back up?
R. Michael asked, how often do you add more buffing compound to strop, and how do you know when to add more?
I add more when I notice the buffing compound isn't cutting as well as it usually was. Unfortunately, that is something you can only learn by experience, and a lot of it. Most of the time, if all of the green buffing compound turns jet black, then I'm going to take a card scraper and I'm going to scrape it off and put on new buffing compound. But that's kind of the rule of thumb. That being said, when I'm actually, if you have an actual straight razor strop, it's just a smooth piece of leather. And so for the maintenance on this, you're just using that smooth leather. If you strop it after every use, so you shave your head once, and then you go and strop it again, so it's ready for the next use. You just need the raw leather, because in shaving my entire head, I'm probably going to take this from like a 90 up to somewhere around 120, 130. And then I can use the raw leather again to then bring it back down to 90 where it should be. And so general use, as long as you take care of the edge, it should only have to hit the strop, the raw strop. If you use it several times without stropping it, then you might have to take it back to the point where you bring the buffing compound back out and clean it up with that. If you drop it and ding it, then you're going to have to take it back to your diamond plates and sharpen it again. There really shouldn't be another reason to take it back to the grinder that's just getting rid of the scale. Any other questions?
Ouroboros Armory asked, do you know the Rockwell of the temper?
I do not know on this one. Actually, no, I do know that. I don't remember the number, but I remember which file it was that scratched it. Let's see. It was 65. Rockwell 65. So it is pretty darn hard. So let's actually go back to working on the body itself. What time is it? 25. Oh, a little bit behind schedule, but not too bad. And what we've got last time is we glued this all up. 1, 2, there we go. We glued this all up and we clamped in the blank here, and so this is where we are at.
Can you focus?
Can I focus? Yes, I can focus. There, is that better?
Yeah.
So this is where we're at, glued it all up. And I've done most of the rough shaping on this, and we're going to go through doing the rest of the shaping. The problem is clamping this is a bit of a annoyance. There's no good way to do it. And so I grab some scrap pieces of wood that I can then fit down inside of this, and this allows me to clamp it nicely in the jaws here. So I can squeeze this down in. And now I can really squeeze up on it, and I have something that I can work on here. And for the shaping, I'm generally going to be using a 4-in-hand, and this is going to allow me to do the rough shaping on here and round and round. Oh, before I go, on the pattern, there's a little X where the hole needs to be, and I need to drill that through. Now, I was wanting to drill it earlier. I want to drill the hole before I do all the shaping, because it makes it much easier to do that beforehand. So I'm going to put this in here, and this bit is a 3/32 drill bit. Drill it off, there we go. We just want to go. And I have those, let me slide it down a little bit more.
Are you just eyeballing where you're putting that?
Yep, just eyeballing. Well, I have that the little X from the pattern.
Oh, okay.
and then I'm just eyeballing it being level. And I have those two scraps in there holding it apart. So I'm actually going to drill through the scraps, or in this case, just above the scraps. And because I don't have anything, normally I would have another block of wood over here. Now I'm just going to blow it out. This is a small bit, so it's not going to cause that much issue, right? Of course, it's palm. Palm's probably going to create a lot of issue. There, now I have a 3/32 hole running all the way through there. And that will be what our pin goes through. And if you bought a kit, it came with 2 smooth pins and 2 screws. In the video I did earlier, I showed how to use the screws. And this one, I'm actually going to show how to do the pins so that you can choose what you want. So I'm going to use the 4-in-hand with the rasp side on here and round this down into the rough shape that I'm looking for. And with this palm, this stuff is nasty, nasty, nasty palm. Why did you guys make me use palm? And so I'm going to be starting on the surface, and as I go, I'm just wrapping around. Oop, now I'm going to have to switch over to the file because it's starting to catch on that. And I have this paper on here, and this paper kind of gives me an idea of what I've scratched and what I have not scratched. So I can go until the paper disappears, and I can get a nice clean rounding surface from one side all the way around. And if you've done it right, you can actually go all the way around the piece and get a smooth surface there. On the ends, I'll lift it up a little bit higher. I want to make sure that I'm going off the end. So I want to start down here and go up. And with the rasp, I'm just going to get it close to shape. I'm not going to get really, I'm not going to do a huge amount on there. And then I'm going to flip it over, grab the file side. And with this, I'm going to do it. And you see how I'm starting here flat, and I'm trying to end up somewhere around here. That way I can get a nice rounded surface all the way around there. Then once I've got that done, I'm going to take it out of this, and I'm going to grab a really, really fine file, and I'm going to sit down here and I'm just going to hand file this whole thing down. And I'm probably going to do this for 25-30 minutes or more. And I like using a file over sandpaper because the file will only hit the high points. Sandpaper, especially on this palm, will hit all the soft spots and you'll start to get this sandblasted look. Whereas the file will hit all the spots evenly and cleanly. It just takes a good bit of time to work through it. So I'm not going to detail this one out beautifully right now. I can do this afterwards. But this is one of my favorite parts because I can just spend a lot of time doing this. And sometimes I'll get to a point, I'll wet my fingers down, and then I'll rub them on the wood, and I can see where there are scratches that I still need to focus on a little better. Let me see if I can show you that. Yeah, I don't think you're going to be able to see it. But if I wet my finger down, put it on here, you can see there's ridges right along here that I need to do a little more work on. And so
I don't know why I thought you were going to like actually dip your finger in water versus using spit.
And so I'm just going to keep going until I get a nice smooth surface all the way around on this. And probably take it up to around 400 grit or so. I'll hit it with this file until I get it nice and smooth with this. And then I'll bring out the 400 or 600 grit sandpaper. Just kind of give it a bit of a polishing. Always rubbing my finger over it. Making sure everything is nice. For the ebony on here, I'm just going to be doing the exact same thing I had with the 4-in-the-hand. I'm going to use the rasp and shape the ebony to where I want, then flip it over, use the file side, shape it over, then use the fine file and slowly come in and clean it out. This is a fun part that I really, really enjoy. So the next thing we need to do is we have a couple different options. Number one, I've gotten this done basically where it needs to be. And so I can go ahead and finish this. Oh, I got this ridge on here. It's driving me bonkers. Just one little spot. I have to... All right, that's better. I can go ahead and finish this, and then I can put the pin in and hold it in place. Or I can put the pin in, put the blade in, and then finish the whole thing. And there's a couple different pros and cons to that. Number one, if I'm going to finish this with a spray coat or something of that nature, then if I put the blade in, then I have to be able to protect the blade so I don't spray the blade as well. But if I finish this ahead of time and then I put the pin in, I'm going to do a little bit of filing where the pin is at, and I'm going to have to hit those spots as well because I'm going to rub off the finish. And so usually what I'm going to do, and what I did for mine, is I'm going to go ahead and finish it now. And then when I put the pin in and I file the pin down, then I'm going to come back and hit that spot again. And that's one of the things I love about boiled linseed oil is when I put it in there, redoing the finish isn't a problem. There isn't a smear line because it's not a buildup on there. If I were doing something like shellac or something of that nature, there's a buildup on there and it's kind of hard to touch up one little spot. So let's actually go about installing the blade. Any questions so far that I need to hit?
So a couple equipment questions.
Okay.
Brian Ross asked, is that the Craftsman hand drill you restored a couple years ago?
Yes. Yes, it is.
And then Tom Engel asked,
where's the pen?
what is the name of the test device you just used for testing the sharpness?
This is the best certified PT50A. And it is very, very pricey. You can get the homeowner one that's like $150 plus test media. And that one will give you about a 10 gram window of variance. You can get the medium grade one for like $250. That'll give you a 5 gram variance. And then this one is the high end industrial version that gives you a 1 gram measuring, but it's like 300 and some bucks. So yeah, not everyone gets one of those, but it is kind of fun to be able to test it.
I'm trying to figure out how you got one.
What's that?
I'm trying to figure out how you got one for $300.
Actually, the company that made it, I contacted them and said, "Hey, can you cut me a deal?" And so they gave it to me at price. So it was $150 for me. Yeah, I'm special. Okay.
So
this.
Steve Does Stuff says, I know you're a palm guy, but have you tried white oak with a super chat?
I tried white oak. Oh, okay. I thought you said white oak with the super chat. I was like, tried white oak with a super chat. Does people do a super chat and pay in white oak? That'd be kind of cool. I can do that. Yeah, yeah. Send me some white oak. That counts as a super chat. I know you're. Have you tried white oak? Yes. I wish you guys would have let me do this one in white oak, but
so
I did give you the options.
But we have to do a joke.
Oh yes, mom joke. Here it comes.
So you got sent this with an item. So the
yeah.
person didn't want to be named, so I'm not naming them. But I like the joke that they included. So it says, a woman is on trial for destroying her husband's guitar collection. Judge says, first offender? She says, no, first a Gibson, then offender.
Yes, that is a good one.
Okay, and then I have one other question whenever you...
Go ahead and give it to me. I was setting this up.
Anthony Moraes asked, what ear protection do you recommend when you were talking about the grinder?
I don't have my Sarah, they're up in front of the keyboard there. I use isotunes.
Are these things?
Yes.
Can you see them?
That's a microphone as well.
Well,
But they're earplugs, but I can play music through them. But otherwise, I just use the standard earplugs. But isotunes makes it so I can listen to audiobooks as well. And no, I'm not supported by isotunes. I bought those myself. Okay, where are we at? Oh, pin. Okay, so in the video, I actually showed putting a screw in here. And the nice thing about a screw is that you don't have to peen anything over because the threads will hold onto the wood on the other side. So you literally just drive a screw in, cut the screw off, grind it down, and you're good to go. But over time, it might work out, and you might end up running the threads off. So option number 2 is you can put in epoxy. And so I have these little brass pins, and they're 3/32 brass pins. And so I could put in a little bit of epoxy and put that in, and then just hope I don't glue everything in place. or hope I glue what I want glued in place and not what I want. The traditional method is actually to rivet these on. And so they have a 3/32 tiny little washer that goes on either side, and they peen out either side. And I was trying to find a set of washers that I could give with these, but for the life of me, I couldn't find decent size washers that would work for it. So they have to be very, very thin stock, 3/32 hole, and then just like a 16th inch rim all the way around it. So it's very, very tiny little washers. And I couldn't find them. So the other option is you can just peen it over, and that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to show you how we go about doing that. So let's switch over to this camera. Hopefully, where are we at? Right here. You can get a little bit better vision on this. There we go. Focus. And we are going to have a bit of time for questions left afterwards, so if you have any of those, throw them in there. So I'm going to fit into one side here, and I want it to come into the wood just a little ways so I can see it coming out inside the gap there. Then I'll put the blade on, making sure that I put the blade on the right way. I don't want to put it in the opposite way. I don't want the blade sticking out, I want the blade sticking in. I set that into there and then work this pin. So I'm going to separate these apart so that I can see the pin, and I can get the pin down into this. And once I get into there, then we can wiggle it up into the wood on the other side. Maybe.
Maybe.
Where did that mallet go?
Oh, I thought you were just going to use your hand and just...
There we go. So in this case, I have this thing is just shy of an 1/8 inch. Oops, sorry. Just shy of an 1/8 inch longer than this plate is wide. What's that?
Focus.
Focus? This one's going to be a hard one to focus because I'm going to focus down here.
If you turn it that way, it's not so bad.
And then I'm going to grab a piece of steel, or in this case, the back end of a file. I'm going to put this down in here. And I'm actually going to use the peening end of the hammer. And very, very carefully mushroom this over. Now, the easiest way to do it is to start it, lift this up so it's nice and flat, is use a blunt tip on here. And so this is an awl where the tip has worn down, and I'm going to put it right in the middle of the work. And very, very carefully tap it down in. And this being right in the middle of that pin is going to spread it out and mushroom the top over. Let me see if I can get a closer view of this. Because this is one of these fun things. I wish I had a camera that I could get right down on it. Uh-oh. Camera stopped. Let me see if I can get it back online. Come on. There we go. Focus. Ah!
All right, it's the Sarah Wright show, haha.
Yeah. This is the Sarah Wright show. This camera just doesn't like me. Come on. Stay on.
Doesn't want to stay on. What would you do? Pull the cord?
Yeah. It's not on battery, it's on the cord, and it doesn't like the cord.
It doesn't like the cord.
Oh, come on. This isn't going to work without showing this.
Okay, time for a mom joke while that happens.
Sounds good.
So, I have a love-hate relationship with elevators. Sometimes they bring me up, and sometimes they bring me down. I like that one. The Sarah is Always Right show. Ooh, I like that, Armichael. I like it. Because it's true. I don't have my sweater on today.
There we go. As long as I don't touch it, it should work. There. Okay, we're in focus. Ha ha! We're back! So I'm just putting this on here and driving it right down in the middle. Trying not to slip off like that. And that's going to mushroom this head out. Then I can push this over. And I probably need to do that first. So in this case, yeah, let's do it on this one. So this one's sticking out. Let me see. Too close here. The pin is sticking out a bit too much here. So I'm actually going to file this down a little bit more before I go down. This one is sticking out right about the right amount. And so it's just sticking out here about a 1/16 inch or so. So I'm going to put that into the vise. here. And we're going to cut it off. And actually, I'm going to use a file. No, I'm going to use a saw. Just enough.
Do you not want to...
What's that?
You don't have anything to stop that blade. It's just floating right now.
What's floating?
The blade.
What blade?
When you're sawing and I just didn't.
Yeah, it's just floating.
Okay. Instead of closing it. Okay, I guess I'm not concerned enough.
Here we go. Now we can pin this down. So let's move back over here. Focus, focus, focus. Focus, focus. There we go. So now we can drive this down. Actually, let me do a little bit of this first. Flip it over. And if there's any blacksmiths out there, they're laughing at me right now because this is not my skill. This is one of the things that is hard to learn and get accurate. Of course, I'm bashing up the end of that, and we'll clean that up with the file a little bit. And there. That has been mushroomed out and is a good bit wider. And so now it's actually stopping that from coming in and out. So the straight razor has a bit of friction in there, so it stops at whatever point I leave it at. And it's not going to fall out. And that is what we're looking for. So the next thing we want to do is actually clean that off and smooth it because right now it's a bit rough. So I'm going to grab my finest file, and with that brass, I can just smooth it down till we get a clean transition across there. I like that. So now we have a smooth edge all the way across that brass pin. Do the same thing on this side. And just like that, we're ready for finish. So that has been peened in place. Now for the finishing process, I can just dip this whole thing in oil. Let me grab my oil right down here. And because I don't want to get it as much on the steel, I'm just going to dip it down. You're not seeing this, are you?
We can see.
You can see? Is it in focus?
Mm-hmm.
Dip it down as far as we can, and then finger wet the rest of it down. And I'm going to have to come back and file this down a bit more and smooth it out. But that is that. And this palm just soaks up this oil. I'll get a rag in here and work some oil down in between these without slicing my finger on the blade. The nice thing about that is it's oil, so we got a bit of a friction, oiling on there, and that's that. We've got ourselves a straight razor, except for it just needs to be smoothed down a bit more. One thing about doing it live, so I'm probably have about an hour's worth of work total in shaping this handle, and I put about a half hour in before the video. It's actually a really interesting texture and color. I kind of like that. There you go, straight razor. So what questions we got?
Let's see. Alan Smith asked, what is the maker of the brass tool?
The brass tool. Oh, my awl. This is actually made by, oh my, what's his name? Doc. Everyone calls him Doc. He has a YouTube channel, but he's only put up a few videos on there. And do you remember we went to his house when we went out to Pennsylvania? He also gave me a chop saw. They just had a baby before we got there. That would have been like, what, 4 years ago?
At least.
So yeah, that's gonna bug me.
John Burkett?
No. But he's a plumber, and so he made this out of plumbing parts. And,
no, I was thinking of somebody else.
That's gonna bug me now. I can't remember his name. Doc. Oh, just always call him Doc, and I can't remember his channel.
No,
it's Doc something.
It's been a while.
Yeah. What other questions we got?
Let's see. I'm not sure I'm going to say this right. Anjanette Horn asked, is he using regular BLO or is it blended with wax or anything?
That's just straight BLO. So what I'll actually do for the finish on this is I will probably end up putting 3 or so coats of BLO with about 15 minutes in between, just waiting for it to soak in until it doesn't soak anymore. Wipe off the excess. Let it sit for 20 minutes or so to dry, wipe off anything that's sticking on the outside, and then I'm going to use a paste wax and buff that into the surface, and that'll give it its shine and fill all the pores. Particularly with this palm, having the paste wax on there to fill the outside is very useful. But yeah, it's just straight BLO and then paste wax afterwards, which if you want to see, I have quite a few videos on BLO and paste wax. What's next?
Our Michael said, glad we made you use palm as you put on the BLO.
That is a nasty wood. Nasty, nasty. I don't even know if you can call it wood. I think it's more of a grass. But, yeah.
All right. Those were the questions that were related to the project.
Okay.
And then I was supposed to tell you.
10 minutes left?
Can-Do said hi.
Hi, Can-Do.
And then Tom Engel asked, what did you buy at the last MWTCA meet you went
I
to?
did not buy a single thing. I know. I know. I went there and well, the reason I didn't buy anything is I didn't take any money with me. I completely forgot to pull some out at the ATM before leaving here. And then I went up there and it's like, oh, there's an ATM at the facility. Well, the electric was out there, and so there wasn't an ATM at the facility.
You didn't tell me that.
So I didn't have any money. But there were 2 or 3 things that I may have bought if I had money, because I don't buy tools because I'm looking for a tool to use. I buy tools for, hey, this would make a really cool video. Let me buy the tool and show people about this particular tool. And so I look at tools in a slightly different way. But no, I didn't buy anything at the last meet, which was, I think, the first meet I've ever gone to, and I didn't buy anything, which is really weird. But such is life.
You lived. It's amazing.
I know. It was weird.
See, the dangerous thing about this next meet is you don't have to pay shipping on anything.
Yeah.
Or worry about a weight limit. This is the one I get nervous about.
Yeah. Yeah, last year I bought a bow saw, I bought the miter trimmer, I bought a lot of stuff at the one last year. But there were some very interesting tools, and I made quite a few videos off of that one. So.
All right, I got a couple more coming in.
Okay.
Let's see. Alan Smith asked, when is James going to finish that project behind him, the one with the spring clamps?
That is the next glue test, and I'm gluing up enough of these boards that I can run a test for 20 to 30 years and actually test the longevity of 8 of the specific glues. But that means I need to glue on, it was something like 1,200 blocks. No, it's more than that. And so it's taking me several months to glue them all on. And so I'm doing them in sequence so that it won't be a problem like I'm gluing all one type on and then all another type. I'm actually gluing a whole batch and then another whole batch and another whole batch so I can test them out. So I have about 3/4 of them already out in the garage, and this is the last quarter of them to glue up. So those will probably be another month or so to actually get them all glued up. And I've been working on them since around Christmas. So it's a long project that I'll be working on for years and years and years to come. What's next?
Let's see. Steve Does Stuff asked, when are we getting the hot pink can bling?
When I buy a number 1, I'll spray paint it hot pink just for everyone. Oh my word, that would be a fantastic video. I'm going to restore this number 1 back to its original. Hot pink spray paint! Yes, I like this.
And then the poor man asks, how's the clock project coming along?
It's not at the moment. I have a lot of other projects that are going that are of more importance. I need to get the desk done so that I can do the Moravian bench, because I have to have the Moravian bench done before June when I go out to the Midwest tool collectors meet. And then I have to have that done before the beginning of June because we're going to be on vacation. And so I have a lot of other projects that I have to get in. The clock is a very, very time-consuming one. I've got a lot of steps I got to do on that really aren't going to make any videos. Because I can shoot quite a few clips of me cutting gears, but of the 30 or so hours I'm going to spend cutting gears, it's not going to produce much more than like 2 or 3 minutes of video footage. So it's one of these projects that's it's not actually going to provide a lot of content, but yet I need a lot of time to put into it, and so that's going to be down the road a little ways. So hopefully, I'm guessing sometime around fall, but we'll see.
Let's see. Blue Kestral asked, what's that plane he was just showing off in front of him?
This is a number 10.5. Something I've wanted for a very, very long time, and this came in the mail today from one of my new most favorite friends. 10.5 is it's basically the number 4 as a rabbit plane. Let me show you. And I have a video showing the 10.25. 10.25? Someone's going to correct me on that. The other one actually has handles that will twist one way or the other.
Focus real quick.
Sorry. Focus. There we go. And so this allows you to get right up onto it. This is great for large tenons that you want to clean up the surface. I am going to use this quite a bit. This one has a few issues. It doesn't have, it's kind of a mishmash of a few other things coming in here. A different lever cap. There was a crack on here that was fixed, and it's done really well. And so I think that it will work very, very well. But I'm gonna have fun playing with this. So they're not easy to come by, and whenever you do, they're well worth it. So it's not an incredibly useful tool for your average woodworker, but for one of those things that's just nice to have in the shop. What's next? Time 55. Okay. She's typing.
Oh, Alan asked how your parents were doing, and I said your dad's been sick with the flu, so we've been avoiding him. But your mom was doing well.
Yes. Yeah, this weekend actually, Sarah and I took diving classes, so we've been having fun doing that. What other questions we got?
Nada.
No, we've gotten through them all?
Yes.
Cool. Well, on that note, we are actually, I haven't quite figured out what we're doing next week. I have the idea of building a bread box with a rolling top. And so I'm thinking about possibly doing that.
Bigger and make it a secretary desk.
I'll put a roll top section on this desk for you. But I think for a little while we're probably going to go back and do some joints and some of the basic joinery and things like that. Those always make really good.
You might have to clarify that. We live in Illinois.
Yes. So if there's something you want to see or think would make a good live video, let me know, and we might be doing that. So we'll be having a little bit of fun with that. Yeah, but I think I like doing these little project builds. If I can build one ahead of time and then bring people into the project, we can do that. This should be interesting. I have this one coming up here. This is coming on Thursday, so this is a sneak preview for those of you sticking around still. And so I just made this. which is a burnisher, but it's a slightly different burnisher on here. And so this is actually a unfinished carbide rod. And so I'm soon going to be selling the kit with the carbide rod and the ring so you can make your own burnisher. And I'll be talking about why I particularly have this one, but I really liked this handle and how it came out. And I'm trying to come up with a name for it. I'm thinking something like a Swiss burnisher or something like that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this video. So hopefully that'll be Thursday. I'll be talking about this one. So yeah, lots of fun things to come. Cool. Well, on that note, unless there's another question or something you need to talk about, we'll wrap this one up. So thank you all for watching. This was a good one. If you have any ideas for next week, let me know. And until next time, have a wonderful day.
Bye.